Here is what I'm reading in May. It is a mix of reading about health, reading about essential oils, reading about reading, and reading a good amount of fiction. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 209 with me, Tara Swiger. This is the monthly What I'm Reading Roundup. So let's just dive right into it. As a reminder, you can find the links to every book that I mentioned. You can find them at my site, taraswiger.com/podcast 209. There's links to all of the books. They're Amazon links. If you use those links, I earn a teeny percentage. It doesn't change your price at all. I earn a little percentage and I turn around and I use that money to buy more books. So this month, I read a lot more books that I'm going to talk about because I read books about a project that I'm not yet ready to talk about with you guys and talk about publicly. So I'm not going to talk about all the books I read, but I promise for this new project, when I announce it, I will tell you the books I read, the ones I found most useful. I'll do a whole episode where we talk just about the books for this project. It'll probably come up next month or the month after. So what I did read that I'm going to talk about is the first one is How Reading Changed My Life by Anna Quindlen. I actually finished this at the end of last month after I had recorded this episode last month. I do one of these episodes every month, and it's just a really great kind of memoir about reading by Anna Quindlen, who's a super best-selling novelist, and how books have played a role in her life, her early reading life, her favorite books, how books helped her think about her own writing. I, as a person who loves to read, I love to read about other people reading and how books have impacted their lives. So it was just great and fun. Kind of read it in between other things, like when I didn't quite feel like fiction, kind of before bed at night with a cup of tea. I really enjoyed it. The second book I read about reading was Dear Fahrenheit 451, Love and Heartbreaks in the Stacks by Annie Spence. This book, I got it from my library just because it was on the library new shelf. That's actually how I find tons of random books about all different topics. So it is letters. It's a format of letters to books. So it's written by a librarian who is culling the stacks, which means when books haven't been checked out for so many years, they get taken out of your library and usually sold in the library book sale, which is like the best thing ever. But those books, she's writing notes to them. So some of them have been read so much they're damaged and that's why they're being removed. Some of them have been not checked out in a long time and they're random and they're weird, like popcorn recipe book. And then others are her own favorites that she's had forever, that she's read over and over. And it's just like, dear book, this is what you taught me. This is what I learned from you. She's a very funny writer. If you love books and you're looking for more books to read, or you just want to hear someone else talk about their reading, it's such a fun book. Very quick, easy. It's, like I said, little letters to books. So I would read one before bed at night to kind of fall asleep and chill and relax. And it's just I usually couldn't stop at one. I would read 2 or 3. The next book I want to talk about is a book that I have not read all the way through because it's huge. This was on my library's new book stack as well, although it's not a new book. So it's called The Complete Book of Essential Oils and Aromatherapy. It's got over 800 natural, non-toxic, and fragrant recipes to create health, beauty, and a safe home and work environments. It's by Valerie Ann Warwood, and this is a classic of using essential oils. She's a aromatherapist. She did lots of research. There is tons of information in this book. A lot of essential oil books will just be a book of recipes. This is not that. She writes a lot about all kinds of things, from major sports concerns to men's health to women's health. PMS, premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, is a page I just flipped to. She both writes about what it is, what causes it, what else you can do in your life to help relieve it, the essential oils that will help with it, and then I just noticed that it says angry and aggressive PMS essential oils, and then just regular PMS essential oils, and weepy and depressed PMS essential oils, irritable and disagreeable PMS essential oils. So she breaks it up by emotion you might be having, And then she gives you some blends to blend the stuff together to deal with that. She also has a whole section about babies, children, and teenagers. She has sections about men, about women, about major health concerns, and she has sections for the home, for the office. I'm definitely forgetting some. Oh, beauty, cooking, animals, gardens, and then she's got a lot of charts about like each different oil and its therapeutic uses, properties, cautionary advice. She's got a whole section on like what to look for when you're buying oils. It is, oh, I also really like, she puts together a basic care kit. Like, what are the basics of what you need? And they're actually the basics I talk about all the time. The company I work with, doTERRA, has a kit that includes all the basics that she mentions, the 10 most popular oils. It's called the Home Essentials Kit. And it was just fabulous to read about like why she includes that in the basic care kit. She's not associated with any company. This book has been around forever. This is an, oh, she's a chairperson and chair of research for the International Federation of Aromatherapists. So, this one specifically is the completely revised and expanded version. I have linked up this exact version in my show notes, which again, you'll find at taraswiger.com/podcast209. It's just super informative. I'm actually going to buy it so that I have it on hand as a reference, because obviously I could only, barely dive into it. Oh, there's also a whole section on emotional rescue, anxious feelings, emotional stress. And what I like is that she writes a lot about the issues and how other ways to treat the issues as well outside of essential oils, what to think about, how the essential oils are actually going to work, why she suggests what she suggests. It's totally fascinating, really good book. And I just happened to find it in my library. Book of Essential Oils, no, the complete book of Essential Oils, The End of Aromatherapy by Valerie Warwood. Again, linked up in my show notes. The next books I read were all, so I've got like 3 here. One is a memoir. It's called And Now We Have Everything by Megan O'Connell. And it is a memoir about like the getting pregnant and first 2 years of her, I think, son's life. Basically her adjustment into motherhood. And she shares her birth story, which is kind of horrifying. It actually was almost exactly, it had so many of the same details as one of my best friend's birth stories, and she told it in excruciating detail, so I felt like I understood my friend even better. And she talks about not feeling prepared and the changes in her life and how she had to come to terms with some things. So I thought it was really great, honest kind of book I will give to my new mom friends when they feel like they're struggling. And then I read 2 novels. One is A Conspiracy in Belgravia by Sherry Thomas. That is a second book in the Lady Sherlock series, which I love. It's so good. It's so fun. It's so well written. It is just like a super fun mystery. And the premise is basically Sherlock Holmes is not a real person. He's a creation of Charlotte Holmes, who they live in Victoria, England, and she's creating independence for herself. This is a way that she gets a job, is basically by pretending like there's a Sherlock Holmes and she's his sister, and detectives and policemen and family members consult with them about mysteries, and she's so smart, she solves it. And then the second book that I loved was called Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. So this is a sci-fi book. And it is, I feel like I first sought it out because of the Read Harder Challenge. I've talked about the Read Harder Challenge a couple months ago. I'll link it up in the show notes. It's basically 24 tasks to read outside of what you normally read. And in doing my research for fulfilling one of the challenges, Ancillary Justice came up. It's, I think because it's sci-fi written by a female author. It's actually one of 3, so I have the other 2 I'm about to start reading, Ancillary Sword and Ancillary Mercy. And I don't know how to, so Ancillary Justice was a Hugo and a Nebula Award winner. Nebula is a prize for sci-fi books, so it's super good. It's award winning. I'm not going to go deep into the premise, but one of the things that is so interesting about it is that the narrator comes from a planet where they don't have pronouns, like gender-specific pronouns. So they have people who are different or identify as different genders, but they don't have gender-specific pronouns. So if you know another language other than English, you realize that languages like French and Spanish actually don't just have female-male pronouns, but the nouns, non-gendered things, are also given a gender, right? Like, well, now I can't remember any of my French, even though I have a degree in French. So like a book, right? It's not just the book. It's like le or la. It's either masculine or feminine. And of course, I'm blanking on what anything is. But in this language, it's the opposite. It's like farther on the spectrum of no gender for even men and women. So you don't say she or he. It's just more like they. And that means that when the narrator is telling the story, instead of a book like, I read it last month, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, in that story, the people in the nation actually don't have a specific gender. And the narrator, though, comes from Earth, and so he calls everybody he and him, even though they're not male or female. Well, this book flips that, which I love it. So because her language doesn't have a he or a she defaults to calling everyone, the narrator defaults to calling everyone she. So every description of every character, every time they're referenced, is she or her. Even though when you read the description of the character, it's obvious that it's a male, because her language doesn't have the different genders. Instead of just saying they, she says she. It's kind of mind-bending and really interesting how that changes your perception. And most of us have never read a book where literally every person in the book is referred to as she and her. And instead, what many books do, like Left Hand of Darkness and many other sci-fi books, is they default to he and him all the time when they're describing anybody. And that is, it's just like twisting on our expectation, our societal expectation, that the default is male instead of the default being female. Really. But that is like just a tiny detail of the book. The book actually has this whole amazing, super intricate, super complex story set in a different universe than ours. Super, super good. So those were the two novels I wanted to talk about. They were the best ones I read this month. I read other ones too, not worth mentioning. And then the other book I'm reading is, do I have it here? Oh, I don't think I have it here. Yes, I do. The American title is How to Make Disease Disappear by Rangan Chatterjee. The British title I like so much better. This was a book that was first published in the UK, and its title is The 4-Pillar Plan. That's really what it is. Ignore this title. Think of it as the 4-Pillar Plan, because in it he talks about the 4 pillars to health and ways you can make small changes to improve your health. It's not just eating and exercise, it's also resting and sleeping. And he talks a lot about that. Jolie and I are actually reading this as part of the Essential Enthusiasm Book Club. Our listeners and friends voted on this to be the book club book for May, so we're both reading this. We're going to talk about it in this Friday's episode. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, this Friday's episode of Essential Enthusiasm, which is my other podcast I do with my friend Jolie Kelly of joliecreates.com, we're going to talk way more about this book because it will be the end of the month and we finish this book, and so have many of our listeners. You can vote. So first, you can listen to us talk more about what's in this book and how we applied it and just have a conversation about it in this Friday's episode of Essential Enthusiasm. However you're listening to this right now, you can find Essential Enthusiasm. So if you're listening on your phone, whatever podcast app you're looking at, search up Essential Enthusiasm, subscribe. If you are listening to this on my YouTube channel, you can go to all the Essential Enthusiasm episodes are also uploaded to the same YouTube channel, so be sure that you subscribe and look at the new videos. And if you're listening to this on my site, I've linked up under this video essentialenthusiasm.com, which is where you can find the podcast and its show notes. And we are finishing up the May book at the end of this month, and we are starting the June book club, which is still open for voting. So our voting is in our Facebook group. It's called Take Care of Yourself with Tara Swiger. Go join Take Care of Yourself with Tara Swiger, and you can vote on the next book we read. We're reading all different kinds of books about mindset, health, living, wellness, kind of like full human picture of who you are as a human, not just a business owner. So you can find the voting for that at the Take Care of Yourself Facebook group. Go request to join. I have to approve you because it's a private group, and you can vote on what we read next. We got some good books up for vote there. So if you want to be reading the same thing that I'm reading and have conversations with me about what we're both reading, this is the way to do it. The Take Care of Yourself with Tara Swiger Facebook group is the way to go. And for weekly discussions on books that I'm reading, I do that with Jolie on essentialenthusiasm.com, or search up the podcast. That's it for the books that I'm reading this month. Coming up next is the rest of the books in the Ancillary Justice series, Ancillary Mercy and Ancillary Sword, and more books for my secret project, which I will probably tell you about this month. So I am going to announce that project on a YouTube video, probably, and on my Facebook page. So make sure you check out my YouTube videos. I'll mention it here on this podcast once it's announced, but if you want to be the first one to see the announcement, make sure you're following me on YouTube. Hit subscribe over there. And if you liked this video, like it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like under the video. It helps more people find it. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think, what you're reading. I would love to hear it. I love book recommendations, and I'm always taking more. So come tell me what you're reading. Come tell me in the Facebook group, Take Care of Yourself. Come tell me on YouTube. And if you enjoy the podcast, you can leave a review on iTunes or however you listen. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you a week full of reading and books and enthusiasm.